Mm. Mati saranam buddho me saranam etena satchavajena bhavatu me jayamangala Mati me saranam Dhammo me saranam etena satchavajena bhavatu te jayamangala Mati me saranam Sangho me saranam etena satchavajena bhavatu saranam So, good morning to all the friends who is joining. Lakshishi is saying good morning. We have Sutta Nipata, chapter 4.4 today. Suddhaka Suttam. Suddha Atthaka Suttam. The 8 verses on purity. Suddha purity. So that's it. The story is very dating back. It says time of Dasabala Kassapa. Eons back. At that time, one person, because of his friend who was a forester, he donated sandalwood for the construction of the worshipping of the shrine of Dasabala Kashyapa. Must be eons back. So as a result of that wholesome deed, he was born in divine world and remained there for ages. And his whole body was scented with the same sandalwood smell. Then at the time of Gautama the Buddha, he was reborn as the son of a Brahmin banker in Savatthi. And even then his chest used to have rays emanating from it. So all the Brahmins there thought him to be a great person, and then they used to worship him and take around the whole country, and people used to worship him and adore him. And since he is a great man, is radiating such purity. So, having been all over the country, he then came to Savatthi and came in touch with Gautama the Buddha. By that time, he I think got fed up with all that, so he became a monk. And as he was monk, then also his body was radiating those waves. So, and his name was called Chandabha, shining like the moon. So then he meditated and became an arahant. So among the monks, it became an issue that because of his grandeur of his personality, those who saw him, they became pure. That was the kind of word which had spread across the country. So once the monks were discussing it, how it is possible that a person can attain purity just by looking at somebody? Then the Buddha spoke this sutta so as to indicate what is the proper way of becoming pure. So that's how the background of the sutta is. So these are the words of the Buddha, which is in response to that discussion which was going on among the monks. I read the first one, then we can start. Passami suddham paramam arogam ditthena sansuddhi narasya hoti eva bijanam paramanti nyatva suddhanupassati pacheti jnanam. Eva bijanam, knowing thus, having paramanti nyatva, and considering that this view is the best. What view? Passami suddham paramam arogam. I see a pure person, a noble and a healthy person. Ditthena sansuddhi narasya hoti. Just by seeing him, a person will become pure. It says people who hold this opinion and consider this the best. So suddhanupassati pachaitya jnanam. They think that just by looking at a pure person, you can gain knowledge. So then this is the kind of view which certain people hold. And then the response is Ditthena che suddhi narasya hoti. If by looking at views, the philosophical views, or looking at people, it will be interpreted both ways. One becomes pure. Jnanena vaso pajahati dukkham. And if just by this knowledge one could drop all the sorrow. Annena so sujjati so padikko. Then it means there is some other path also for becoming pure. Ditthi pavat tatha vadanam. Anybody who thinks like this, that other than eightfold path also one can become pure, this is obviously wrong. So it tells monks that this view itself shows the nature of this person. Ditthi pavat tatha vadanam. Meaning that obviously this is not, because monks knew that anybody will become pure only by following the eightfold path. So if anybody thinks that just by looking at somebody or by philosophical views you can become pure, that shows a very poor understanding of them. Then next.
Na brahmano anyato suddhima ditthe sute silavate muteva punye cha pape cha anupalitto attanjaho niyadi pabubbano
करना चाहता है पकारोती से ही न ब्राह्मणों अन्यतो शुद्धिमाह. जो ब्राह्मण, कोई भी ब्राह्मण ऐसा नहीं कहता that शुद्धि जो है it comes from other path, by other means, from external means. Ditte by seeing something, sute by hearing something, shilvate by following virtues, and muteva or by thinking about, or punye che pape che anupalitto. So only a person who is लिप्त नहीं है किसमें, पुण्य में भी और पाप में. One who is transcended both merit and demerit. Attanya jaho, who is given up the ego, attana, naida pakubbamano. Such a person does not commit any karmic action. So this is the way to become pure.
इसमें शील को भी क्यों लपेटे में ले लिया?
सिर्फ शील पालन करने से ही कोई सोचे कि बस मैं प्योर हो जाऊंगा, दैट इज नॉट सफिशिएंट।
सिर्फ वाला जो है ना वो इम्पोर्टेंट है, क्योंकि बाकी सब चीजें तो इवेंचुअली सुनना चाहिए धर्म को, सोचना चाहिए।
एवरीथिंग इज वैलिड, बट जस्ट बाय डूइंग इट वॉन्ट हैपन।
अगर शील पालन करने से ही
केवल शील पार करने से या केवल सुनने से, केवल विचार करने से नहीं होने वाला। तो अभी तो हमने मंगल सूत्र में पढ़ा था ना, सुनना चाहिए, पढ़ना चाहिए। सो इट इज पीपल थिंक, क्योंकि उनको ये भाव था कि सिर्फ उसको देखने से ही काम चल जाएगा, जो ब्राह्मण थे। So he just wanted to point out that that was fallacy of that.
उरिमम पहाए अपरम श्रितासे यजानुगा ते न तरिणति सडंग।
संगम attachment
ते उग्हायति
and take up
निरसजनति कपीव साखम पमुचम गहाय।
तो उदाहरण दिया गया है, कपीव शाखम पमुंचम गहाय। जैसे बंदर जो है एक शाखा को पकड़ता है, एक को छोड़ता है, दैट इज द स्टेट ऑफ पीपल हु पुरिमम पहाए अपरम सिता से, जो क्या छोड़ लो, पहले कुछ को किसी एक डॉक्ट्रिन को पकड़ेंगे, फिर उसको छोड़ देंगे, किसी और को पकड़ लेंगे। एजानुगाते न तरंति संगम, दे and by doing this they can, following their attachment, they will never link with desires, because they are still searching, ये तरीका है, ये philosophy है, कि वो philosophy है, and they are like monkeys who let go of one branch to grasp another and to let go it again. So the point being made is that pure philosophical doctrines can always be innumerable. So you can move, take one, accept one, then take another, then take another, then take another, and keep on going keep on being ejanugami, keep always in motion, going from one attachment to another attachment, grasping something, giving up something, and so on. So merely intellectual discussions, philosophies, following philosophies will not bring you to peace, because there will never be a philosophy which will always satisfy for all times to come.
संयम समादाय वतानि जन्तु उच्च चावचम गच्छति संयम ततो विद्वाच वेदेहि सनीच धम्मं न उच्च चावचम गच्छति भूरिपन्य।
संयम समादाय वतानि जन्तु, अपने आप जो करता है, वतानि मीन्स religious practices. So one who himself has undertaken some religious practices. Uchchavacham gacchati sannyasatto, one who is attached to sanya goes from sometimes from superior state to inferior state. Vidvacha vedehi samecha dhammam, but the wise people, the vidwan log hain, they knowing the dhamma properly. Na uchchavacham gacchati bhuripanya. So one who is wise, he does not pass from superior state to inferior states. So that is the kind of justification being given. Difference between purely understanding intellectually and those people who are truly wise.
Understanding and wise,
those who has imbibed the understanding, has become really established in Dhamma, followed the Eightfold Path thoroughly, and given up, जैसे पीछे था ना, अत्ता जनाति, given up the next statement, attanna jaho naida pakubbaman, one who has given up all attachment to self, and he has given up all actions, which are whether they are pure or impure. He doesn't do any actions, meaning karmic action. He doesn't do, he has no doership. अत्ता न जाहो का मतलब यही हो ना कि अत्ता छोड़ दिया उसने, जिसने अत्ता छोड़ दिया, सेल्फ भी छोड़ दिया, it's not that he is not doing anything, but whatever he is doing is without any doership. He does it as a functional activity.
मतलब वही अनुभव पर प्रैक्टिस करना है।
जो जिसने अहम का भाव छोड़ दिया है तो उस तरह से वो कुछ भी करेगा तो सिर्फ फिलॉसफी से अहम का भाव तो नहीं छूटने वाला ना।
सशब्दघनेषु विषेणुभूतो यं किञ्चिदित्थं वा सुप्तं मुक्तं वा तमेव दस्युं विवातं चरन्तं केनधा लोकस्मिन् विकप्पायेयः।
विकल्प जो है सशब्दधम्मेषु विषेनि भूतो, विषेनि का मतलब actually literal meaning है without any meaning, but I think what it is trying to say, who has dissociated from all the dhammas, yam kinchidittham vasutam mutam va, whatever is seen, heard or thought, so means he has imbibed it so much that he doesn't have to really get trapped in any of those things. Tameva dasim, of such a person who sees, who is such an insightful person, vivattam charantam, who dwells without any hiding anything. Kenida lokasme vikappeya. How would anybody in this world doubt about the insight of such a person who conducts himself openly, who is not given to any particular philosophical point of view. जो इन्होंने डिसोसिएटेड किया ना, it could also be meant as who is not antagonistic to any of them, because विषेनी का actual meaning without enemy है. So it means he could also mean that he who is not antagonistic to anything, whatever he has seen, heard or thought, and he sees things directly.
यहाँ धम्मा का इस्तेमाल is not for the teaching,
No,
it's
for the phenomenal world.
mind states.
Phenomenal world.
न कपयन्ति न पुरुखरोन्ति एकान्तसुस्थिति नाते वदन्ति अदनगम
आदान बाहर है ना तो
कथया विसाच्या असंना कुबंती कुहिंसी लोके।
न कपयंती मतलब कल्पना नहीं करते हैं, न प्रोखरंती ना ही किसी को बहुत ऊंचा उठा के बोलते हैं. They don't speculate, they don't esteem any views. अत्यंत शुद्धित नते वदंती, और ये नहीं कहते किसी को कि दिस इज द हाईएस्ट प्योरिटी. आदान ग्रंथम, जिन्होंने क्लिंगिंग को, ग्रंथि को, गथितम विसज्जा, गिवन अप, कट द नॉट ऑफ अटैचमेंट. आसम न कुबंती, कोई आशा नहीं है, कुबंती कुहिंच लोक है, इन दिस वर्ल्ड एनीवेयर दे हैव नो एक्सपेक्टेशन, दे डोंट वांट, दे आर नो लॉन्गिंग फॉर एनीथिंग. सो सच आर द पीपल हु बिकम प्योर. सीमातिगो ब्राह्मणो तस्य नत्थि ज्ञात्वा न वदिस्वा वसमुग्गहितं न रागरागी न विरागरत्तो तसिद्धा नत्थि परम मुग्गहितांति. तो जो ब्राह्मण जो है सीमातिगो, सीमा को क्रॉस कर दिया है. विच सीमा? जो हमारी नॉर्मल एग्जिस्टेंस की सीमा को क्रॉस कर दिया है. ज्ञात्वा वदिस्वा वसमुग्गहितं, जो जाना गया है या देखा जा रहा है उसके बारे में, इट डजंट ग्रैस्प एनीथिंग. न राग रागी न विराग रत्तो, ही डिलाइट्स नीदर इन पैशन नॉर इन डिस्पैशन.
डिलाइट्स इन डिस्पैशन कैसे होता है?
मतलब कोई सोचता है कि आई एम बिकम डिस्पैशनेट एंड ही इज टेकिंग इट एज ए ग्रेट अचीवमेंट एंड फील्स, टेक्स इट पर्सनली. तस्य इधा नत्थि परम मुग्गहन्ति, for him there is nothing which he can grasp as the highest. In this world there is nothing which he can grasp. Suddhattaka Suttam Chaturtham Nitya. Suddhattaka Sutta is ended. This is in contrast to the 4.3 में दुट्ठा अट्ठक था ना, इम्प्योरिटी वाला चैप्टर था. Impurity. So any comments? Anybody has any questions?
No.
Good. So, वो मतलब अभिधम्मा वाला भी मैंने आज इनके फोन में ट्रांसमिट कर दी चीजें.
अच्छा, हम भी साथ साथ देख पा रहे हैं.
देख पाएंगे. तो keeps on gathering. कौन सा है हमारा स्लाइड नंबर? आरंभन पच्चे है ना. हेतु हो गया, आरंभन भी हो गया, अधिपति भी हो गया. अन्यतर बच्चे ये है ना. 43. Slowly these things will get more confusing.
सर अभी बहुत हो गया है.
ये तो शुरुआत है. ये तो शुरुआत ही है.
दोनों साइड नंबर कौन से
43. अधिपति तो हो गया था उसके बाद 43.
So actually he's asking something but I'm not sure. It says extreme purity person. How does move in this word?
Atta na jahi. That was the key thing. Giving up self-view. Then it doesn't hold on to anything. I mean, normally the Buddha won't say he's not bothered even about dispassion because that is seen as a stepping stone towards
उसको भी उन्होंने वो कर दिया.
rag, na ragi, na rag. He's not given, he is not holds on to craving or to dispassion. So this, I mean, basic idea is that there is no doership notion. Things are happening without I being involved in it, which is the state of an arahant. It doesn't take anything personally.
लेकिन जो उसके आसपास के लोग होंगे
That's all right. Doesn't matter. That doesn't matter.
ये अल्टीमेट रियलिटी पे चला गया सीधा. कन्वेंशनल को बिल्कुल
वो क्योंकि वो उसको समझ रहे थे ना कि उसके शरीर से रेज निकल रही हैं and he is a pure person, he is born pure. So उसको देख सारे देश में घुमाया उन्होंने उस चंदीभा को कि इसको देख लो, इससे तुम्हारी मुक्ति हो जाएगी. The Brahmins took him around the whole country and then that person got fed up and he said मैं यहीं जाता हूँ. So we'll meditate for 5 minutes before we start. I think that will be better. So we start this study. Let's recall what is Patthana we are studying. Patthana meaning is Patthana, the third section of it. It is Patthana means it gives you the relationships between various dhammas, how the various dhammas operate. And as we have seen, there are 24 kinds of relationships. Normally in suttas we normally talk of Pachaya. Say the famous Paticca Samutpada talks of Avidya Pachaya, Sankhara Pachaya, Vinyana Pachaya, Namarupam. So that Pachaya is being explained basically. Sometimes meditators think that Pachaya means cause. So, and that cause means one particular kind of relationship. But that's not correct actually, because that can cause confusion. So Pachaya means conditionality, conditional relationships. Now what is the nature of condition is being explained in Patthana. And as we have seen in the beginning of this brief enunciation, there are 24 types of conditionalities which I talked of. Hetu Pachaya, Arammana Pachaya, Adhipati Pachaya, and so on. So these three we have studied. Hetu was the root condition. Lobha, dosha, moha, alobha, dosha, moha. 6 roots which support the whole structure of body-mind complex. Then we have arammana, the objects, which give rise to mind states, certain objects. We are looking at this flower, it is giving rise to seeing. So that is arammana pachaya. Looking at sound and so on. So that was the adhipati, preponderant impact, which are very dominant. Chanda adhipati, Viryadhipati and so on. We had seen these 4 main adhipatis, and we can see that whatever is dominant, that will determine what we'll be doing. Chanda can be, as we had seen, Chanda, Virya, Chitta, they can all be wholesome or unwholesome. Only Vimamsa, investigative knowledge, can be wholesome because that is a part of Panya. So those discussions we have had until now. So let us study the Anantara Pachaya.
So ये जो वो जो पच्चया हम सूत्र में यूज करते हैं वो कौन सी कंडीशन?
हाँ, वो तभी पढ़ेंगे जब हम सारे पढ़ लें 24. Then we'll be able to realize कि वो कौन सी कंडीशनिंग है ना?
तो सर ये भी एक्सप्लेन किया हुआ है कि कहीं पे कि हर जो लिंक है वो अलग कंडीशन है.
एक ही नहीं है, मल्टीपल है. अच्छा, that is the real complication, that the conditionalities are also not single. Between X and Y, there can be more than one condition operating simultaneously. So that has to be seen, and it takes some time to really grasp what is going on.
Once we study all 24, then
we'll be clear. Then we'll be in a position to study the Paticca Samutpada in a proper manner. Then we'll see, this is the way conditionalities are operating.
Shilish has a question, sir. Conditionality versus cause. What's the difference?
Normally in
cause is one of the conditionality.
Normal things, we say
one-to-one relation.
Antecedent to precedent. I think Anantara Pachaya is of that kind. I think that will make it clear. Normally, this Anantara Pachaya is taken as cause. We say mother is the cause of daughter. That's an apparent thing. Mother is the cause of daughter. But there are so many other things. which are happening, which are not apparent. So that's the meaning of it. So anantara means there is koi antar nahi hai jisme, continuous. One mental state dies, another arises. One dies, another arises. One dies, another. Normally we say this is like the mother state, and from that the daughter state arises, and that carries the conditioning of the first. So जो उसके characteristics हैं, they are. That's how we say the characteristics are passed down from one mental state to another, from one life to another, and so on. In a loosely, this is what we say. But we'll see there is more complexity to it than what it seems. Really. So अनंतर जैसे है ना, अन नहीं है अंतर, तो हिंदी में बिल्कुल क्लियर हो जाता है जिसमें अंतर नहीं है. तो इस एक्चुअली एक अनंतर है, दूसरे नेक्स्ट जो है वो समानांतर है, तो और कॉम्प्लिकेट हो जाता है वो. समानांतर भी इट्स आल्सो द सेम थिंग बट मोर रिफाइंड केस. So we'll see that later, because I think Lady Sayadaw is the only one who has explained it in that manner. Otherwise they say Samanantar or Anantar almost same hai. Vishuddhimagga says they are almost similar, so let's not get into finer subdivisions. But Lady Sayadaw has given some explanation. We'll study it later when we come to that. So let's first read, and I'll just read out it because it's such a beautiful thing to read. And it explains, it's very simple. If you know a little bit of Pali, you will understand it. So I hope you have by now known that much of it. Anantara Pachayoti Chakku Vinyana Dhatu Tam Sampayutta Kanancha Dhammanam Mano Dhatuya Tam Sampayutta Kanancha Dhammanam Anantara Pachayena Pachayo. Mano Dhatu Tam Sampayutta Kacha Dhamma Mano Vinyana Dhatuya Tam Sampayutta Kanancha Dhammanam Anantara Pachayena Pachayo. What does it mean? Chakku Vinyana Dhatu. Chakku Vinyana Dhatu is understood. The consciousness at the eye. Tam Sampayutta Kanancha Dhamma, and all other dhammas which arise associated with it. Means all the associated chetsikas, mental factors which arise with the consciousness of eye. Mano Dhatuya, and then the subsequent Mano Dhatu, which means, if you remember, in the process Chitta we had seen, after Chakku Vinyana Dhatu arises Sampati Charana Chitta, the receiving consciousness, then arises the investigating consciousness, then the Javana, and so on. So that is being referred to it. That Mano Dhatu, that is called Mano Dhatu. Those are because they are functional kind of thing, they are indeterminate. Tam Sampayutta Kanancha Dhammanam. So, and the associated dhammas, Anantara Pachayena Pachayo, they are contiguous to each other. Means from one comes another. From one comes another. Now this seems like a cause, but all that is being said is this is happening first, then immediately follows this. We're not talking about cause, because in cause gives a perception that there is only single phenomena which is causing. I throw a ball, it comes back. So my while throwing is coming back. Now this seems to be a single cause, single effect. But it's not true. Even in science, if you study, it's not true. Ball is being thrown, there are so many things happening. Air is around, it's getting pushed around. The movement of the earth is happening. All those things are complicated, but they are all neglected in our normal cause-effect relationships. But in a person of the kind of vision of Buddha, you can see that there are so many causes operating simultaneously, and so many of them producing simultaneous effects. So what all that he is saying is, this is what happens first, and then this is immediately followed by that. Chakku Vinyana Dhatu is followed by Mano Dhatu. Then Mano Dhatu Sampayutta Kanancha Dhammanam Mano Vinyana Dhatu Yatan Sampayutta Kanancha Dhammanam Anantara Pachayo. So after Mano Dhatu, Mano Vinyana is after. So we see something, that is immediate seeing, then there is the receiving, investigating, then Mano Vinyana, then that whole impetus goes to the mind. Then Mano Vinyana tries to analyze it and find out, Acha, I have seen something. So it's trying to explain. And same thing happens to every sense door. Sota Vinyana Dhatu Tan Sampayutta Kacha Dhamma Mano Dhatuya Tan Sampayutta Kanancha Dhammana Anantara Pachayena Pachayo. Mano Dhatu Tan Sampayutta Kacha Dhamma Mano Vinyana Dhatuya Tan Sampayutta Kanancha Dhammana Anantara Pachayena Pachayo. Then same thing will happen at Ghana Vijnana Dhatu, Jivva Vijnana Dhatu, next side, 44 mein, Kaya Vijnana Dhatu. So these are the 5 senses which interact with the world, and every sense this happens. We have a sense perception, then it is passed down to mind, then there is a corresponding Mano Vijnana, and that does the analysis, and then we have a complete cognition. The whole process of cognition is comprising of all that, which we had studied in process चित्ता में पढ़ा था ना, सारी चीजें होती हैं. पहले corresponding विज्ञान जागता है, फिर वो मनोविज्ञान जाके उसकी एनालिसिस करता है. So every sense door reception is then followed by mental analysis, and that's what is being explained here. And that these states are contiguous to each other. There is no gap between them. अनंतर है. ये होगा, उसके बाद फिर ये हो जाएगा, फिर ये आएगी, फिर ये आएगी, फिर ये आएगी. So this is what is being said. Then a generalization is being made. Purima Purima Kusala Dhamma Pachimanang Pachimanang Kusalanang Dhammanang Anantara Pachina Pachya. Purima Purima means first. They are lying before the Kusala Dhammas. Pachimanang Pachimanang means later. Kusala Dhammanang Anantara Pachina Pachya. So there are, when you do a Kusala Dhamma, then it can be followed by a Kusala Dhamma. So if you think wholesomely, it can lead to wholesome consequences. Then
Sudhakar has a question. What is the meaning of Sampayukta?
associated. Sampayukta means युक्त है, हिंदी में कहते हैं ना युक्त. Sampayukta means associated one, which arise together.
And Shilesh is saying, where is the influence of Sanya in this process?
That is not being, it's not a explanation in that sense. It is a description what is happening. Sanya will affect, we have seen in Javana Chittas we have discussed. That is where Sanya will operate. When we talked of process Chittas, we had seen वो सारी चीजें फंक्शनल है. आई देखेगी फंक्शनल है, कुछ उसमें कोई valuation नहीं हुआ. Then the first the bhavanga chitta will stop, then the I consciousness will arise, then receiving consciousness, then investigating. From investigating consciousness onwards, then seven mind movements of javana, impulsion. That is where the sanya will operate and determine अच्छा है बुरा है. Remember that mango falling down का example जो था. Mango falling down, mango seeing nothing, हाथ में उठा लिया कुछ नहीं. Then they said, ये तो पका हुआ लगता है, इसको खा लेना चाहिए. So that is where the craving or aversion will arise. Till that time, it is all happening abhyakata, without any. You can say in a way it's kind of functioning which is happening without any wholesome or unwholesome effect. Okay. So Purima Purima Kusala Dhamma Pachimanang Pachimanang Abhyakatanang Dhammanang Anantara Pachena Pachena. Now it's trying to tell that earlier Kusala Dhamma if you have done, in the later it can also become Abhyakata Dhamma. Abhyakata means indeterminate. It may not have any Kusala or Akusala impact. That we'll see through example. Then Purima Purima Akushala Dhamma Pachimanang Pachimanang Akushalanang Dhammanang Anantara Pachena Pachya. So earlier Akushala Dhamma can later give rise to Akushala Dhamma, which is understandable. Similarly, Purima Purima Akushala Dhamma Pachimanang Pachimanang Abhyakatanang Dhammanang Anantara Pachena Pachya. So earlier Kushala Dhamma can later on give rise to indeterminate, which is neither Kushala nor Akushala. Neutral, you can say, call it. Neutral Dhammas also. Now, Purima Purima Abhyakata Dhamma Pachimanang Pachimanang Abhyakatanang Dhammanang Anantara Pachena Pachya. So, Abhyakata Dhamma and neutral Dhamma can give rise to neutral Dhamma. There are situations where this happens. As I said, it's a description. Then Purima Purima Abhyakata Dhamma Pachimanang Pachimanang Kushalanang Dhammanang Anantara Pachena Pachya. So a neutral mental state can subsequently give rise to unwholesome mental state. And a neutral mental state then can give rise to wholesome mental state. So this is possible. This happens This is being mentioned. And then lastly, yesham dhammanam anantara ye dhamma upajjanti chitta chetsika dhamma. So te dhamma tesam dhammanam anantara pachyen pachya. इसको जनरलाइज कर दिया आप. Yesam dhammanam anantara. जो धर्म whatever dhammas arise, and whatever dhammas arise immediately after that, we call them as anantara pachya. This is what is called as anantara pachya. So whatever dhammas with rachitta or chetsika dhammas, whichever arise immediately following something, ye te dhamma tesam dhammanam anantara pachya pachya. So they are called anantara pachya. In the notes you will see I have written down the translation also. I think you can just open that page. So the translations are written there also. So what is this Anantara Pachya? I have tried to put down in 46 slides in that 3 format. So the conditioning factors are preceding mind moments. Conditioning factors are immediately succeeding mind moments. And that conditioning mode is called contiguity or Anantara Pachya. So what is happening? The preceding states pass on and relay their mental legacies to the succeeding state. That is what is happening. Okay. Now, what are the mental legacies? I have put down in the notes if you just open that. There are 6 kinds of mental legacies. So, the Kamma legacy is passed on, Anusaya legacy is passed on. That is the Kamma means the karmic potential is being passed on. Anusaya means the latent tendencies are being passed on. Then Paramis are being passed on. Ajhasya means liking and disliking are being passed on. Vasana means tendencies which are habit patterns are being passed on, and Charita means the mentality which you have cultivated in past lives is being passed on. So that's how these are the kind of legacies which are being passed on. So one state, that's why the example is given of a mother cell, and जैसे science में बताया जाता है ना, mother cells keep on dying and water cells keep on arising. They transmit their characteristic to them, and in our day-to-day life also we say parents transmit quite a bit of characteristics to their children, but it's not entirely the same thing. There's something else also happening. We know that. So this is the implication of Anantara Pachya.
So there's a question from Silesh. Neutral to unwholesome or wholesome. How can it happen without perception?
The issue is that let's see. I think I've given some examples, then I'll answer that question. The mental states are arising. In each mental state, all those mind movements can operate. No? Every mental state has a 17 mind movements. So every process chitta is operating has 17 mind movements, which has a component of javana, which has a component of impulsions. They are all inbuilt. So which is being explained. In some cases, you have, for example, let me answer it immediately. If you remember the process chitta, I think that we'll have to remember. We had bhavanga chitta, which is indeterminate. The next bhavanga is arrested, that is indeterminate. From there, you write chakhu vinyana, okay, and then from chakhu vinyana, sampiti charana chakka. Then those receiving consciousness, investigating consciousness, they are both indeterminate. But after that, javana will arise. There, the impulsion will happen, and it may be wholesome or unwholesome. So, what is being said? You had an indeterminate mental state, a neutral mental state. The next state was wholesome or unwholesome, because in that phase the sangya operated in javana. So this is what is being described. You can have one indeterminate giving rise to another. For example, sampati charana chakka giving rise to the the next investigating chitta. So they are both indeterminate. From one indeterminate, the next one is indeterminate. From one wholesome to another wholesome. Within those 7-9 moments in jhana, if a wholesome thing arises, it can give rise to one wholesome, then another wholesome, then another wholesome. And even in a grosser state, we can see if a wholesome chitta arises, it can give rise to so many other wholesome chittas. Maitri arises, and we then give generosity arises as a result, then kindness arises as a result. So from wholesome, the immediately following can be wholesome. From unwholesome, anger arises, it can give rise to violence, it can give rise to so many things. From unwholesome arises. So this is from wholesome chitta also, we can immediately following it can be a neutral chitta, because person sees and then stops it there. Because there is a mindfulness arising and the person halts further progression of unwholesome chitta. So the 47 I just summarized it. All classes of chittas and their associated chetasikas which have just ceased are related by contiguity relationship to the classes of chittas and associated chetasikas which have just arisen. That is immediately succeeding mind moment. So thus Patisaddhi chitta is related by contiguity relation to the immediately succeeding Bhavanga chitta. So remember Patisaddhi chitta, the first chitta of when a person is born. So that is related by contiguity to the Bhavanga chitta. And Patisandhi is related to the Chuti chitta by contiguity relationship. The last dying chitta of the person is related to Patisandhi chitta by Anantarapachya. The Patisandhi chitta is also related to the previous chittas. You remember we had seen that, discussed that. There is an impact of the earlier chitta also, which will come later, I think. Let me not make it too complicated. So thus series of Pachya Dhammas of this relation resemble a series of preceding mothers, and series of Pachya Upanna Dhammas resemble a series of daughters. So that's what it is being pointed out. So in the notes I have, I think, explained what I was just mentioning. The whole process of rebirth and other things are being explained in full detail. That Bhavanga Chitta represents heredity like a little seed in which the potential for a whole giant tree exists. So it cannot be reshaped nor it can be described as wholesome or unwholesome. It is therefore classified as indeterminate or neutral because it has a seed form. And that's how depending on the nature of the seed, during our lifetime, various propensities, various kinds of leaves and various kinds of branches and various kinds of fruits keep on coming out. So this is, in modern terminology, you can talk, as I had discussed, like a subconscious, which flows constantly throughout our life, right from the moment we are conceived. So it is the unbroken flow is most obvious when we are in mother's womb or in deep sleep. It's completely, continuously, Abhyakata Chitta giving rise to another Abhyakata Chitta, constantly happening like that. So during this constant flow, the preceding movements serve as the condition for succeeding movements, and that is the Anantarapachya condition. Now when the sense perception happens, then the complications begin to happen. You remember? Firstly the Bhavanga Chitta is halted, that again is Abhyakata, it is arrested. Then 5-door sense perception arises, that is also Abhyakata. Just pure Vijnana is neutral, there is nothing in it. So they are all Abhyagata, then whatever the sense for consciousness be. Then investigating is and determining, they are also Abhyagata Chittas. And then 7 moments of fully active consciousness that can be associated with wholesome, functional or unwholesome. It can be any of them. For a Arhant it will be functional. For others it will be wholesome or unwholesome. So that's how from Abhyagata you come to wholesome or unwholesome or Abhyagata. That you can see that here. So during sense perceptions, the jhavanas can be wholesome or unwholesome. the preceding chittas are Vyakata, so Vyakata can lead to any three kind of chittas. So that's the answer to that question. Okay, so this is the Anantara Pachya, which normally we think in terms of cause effect, but it is actually one succeeding another. So the next Pachya is Samanantara Pachya, and as I said, it is mostly in all places it is mentioned, it is essentially the same as Anantara, and then all kinds of examples are given. Simile of a king and a prince, which I've written down, though I didn't really find it much. This is the one which is found in Vishuddhimagga, and I didn't find it much satisfying. I think what Lady Sayadaw says, I put down in 49, it makes much better sense. So he says, in what sense is Samanantara to be understood? It is to be understood in the sense of thorough immediateness. Now, whatever you mean. So then how? In a stone pillar, though the groups of matter therein seem to unite into one mass, they are not without the material quality of limitation or space which intervenes them. For matter is substantial and formative. I will give an example. That is to say, there exists an element of space, or called mediacy or cavity, between two units of matter. But it is not with immaterial qualities. There does not exist any space or cavity between them. Two consecutive groups of mind and mental concomitant. That is to say, the groups of mind and mental concomitants, are entirely without any mediacy, because mental state is not substantial and formative. So it is the mediacy between two consecutive groups of mind and mental concomitants is not known in the world. So it is thought that mind is permanent, stable, stationary and immutable. Hence, Samanantara is to be understood in the sense of thorough immediateness. So it is a kind of splitting of the hair in a sense. So we can leave it. Because all the enunciations which we met with Anantara, exactly same thing is made with Samanantara. So I have not therefore discussed it. So we'll take up one more, Sahajata Pachya. As the main name suggests, Sahajata means which is born together. Co-essence or co-arising. This is how it has been transmitted. This I think we'll understand easily. Chattaro khanda arupino anyamanya sahajata pachyena pachyo. So the four khandas, arupino meaning which living side form. You know, there are five khandas, rupa, and then four arupino khandas. So it's talking of those four khandas, sahajata pachyena pachyo, they arise simultaneously. Now there is another complication introduced, anyamanya. Anyamanya means reciprocity relationship. Now that is another relationship which will follow this, but because it is present simultaneously, so this also is mentioned. Which means whatever arises together, these four khandas, when they arise together, they also are reciprocal. If one of them arises, others will automatically arise. So if Vedana arises, all three will arise. If Sanya arises, all three will arise. So they are also reciprocal, related to each other by reciprocity relationship. Okay? So there are actually two relationships simultaneously operating.
So it means that their relationships that they are rising together, and one cannot arise alone.
That's the way. Similarly, Chattaro Mahabhuta Anyamanyam Sahajata Pachyena Pachya. We know that four Mahabhutas will also arise simultaneously. So thus we have water. We generally tend to think of it as water only, but it has all the four Mahabhutas in it. Only thing is, the Apo Dhatu is predominant. You remember that? Predominant factor we had studied. Apo Dhatu is predominant. Tejo, Vayu, Pathvi Dhatu is less intense. Then Okanti Khanne means at the moment of rebirth, at that moment, Namurupam Anyamanyam Sahajata Pachyena Pachya. At that particular moment, that is a Patisandhi Chitta, all the Chetsikas, they all arise together. But that's only at that moment, not at other moments. Chitta Chetsika Dhamma, Chitta Samuttanam Rupanam Sahajata Pachyena Pachya. So the Chitta and Chetsika Dhammas which arise. Chitta Samuttanam Rupanam, the Rupa which arises because of Chitta. You remember we had discussed there is Chittaja Rupa, Rupa which arises because of mental state. Isn't it? When we are angry, certain Rupa arises.
Or hormones are like that.
Yeah. And the facial expression. And even physically we can see. We are angry, then the facial expression changes. People become red, face ho jata hai, bhaweं tan jati hai, those kind of things. Fear gives rise to some other. So we know that from our own experience that there is a Chittaja Rupa. We had discussed it at the time of Rupa Khanda. So what is pointing at that? They also arise simultaneously. Chitta Setisika Dhamma, Chitta Samuttanam Rupana. So the Chitta and Chetsika Dhammas and Chitta Chetsika तो simultaneously उठ ही रहे हैं, उसके साथ साथ Samuttanam Rupanam जो रूप उसके साथ जब उत्पन्न हो रहा है, they also arise simultaneously. It's not they arise one after another. Mahabhavata Upada Rupanam Sajata Pachena Pache. So along with the Mahabhutas, those Rupas which arise, they also arise simultaneously with them. So the translations I think I have put down here in the notes. If you want, you can see them. Rupino Dhamma, Arupino Dhammanam Kinchikale Sahajata Pachena Pachyo, Kinchikale Na Sahajata Pachena Pachyo. Now there is a difference which is being pointed out. The Rupino Dhamma means material states. Arupinum Dhammanam and the corresponding non-material states. Kinchikale Sahajata Pachena Pachyo. At some time they arise together. Kinchikale na sahajata pachena. At some other time they don't arise together. So where do they arise together? Rupino Dhamma and Rupino Dhamma. For example, the mental states arise at what's called Hidayavatthu as a Rupa. We had I think mentioned it earlier. So these and the Arupino Dhammas, Kinchikale is at the time of conception. वो ऊपर आया था ना औकंतिक हन्ने. So at that moment they arise together because there is no body. So they all arise together. But at all other times, when the person is born, then they don't arise simultaneously. They can arise sequentially.
So मैंने शायद मिस किया था वो हृदय धातु क्या है?
Hidayavatthu. Hidayavatthu is supposed to be the base of thoughts. यहाँ पे जो कहा जाता है ना हृदय जो ध्यान करते हैं तो कहा जाता है. It is supposed to be base of thoughts. Just as eye is the base of eye के नीचे जो sensitive portion है उसको कहा था ना eye base. Similarly ear base. So हर इंद्रिय का अपना बेस है, नाक है, जीवा है. इसी तरह थॉट का जो बेस है उसको हृदयवत्तु कहते हैं.
So interestingly, hृदयवत्तु is not pointed to be co-located to brain.
No. It's in meditation it is said to be located here. It's called solar plexus in the centers. So जब ध्यान करते हैं long courses it is mentioned. You mentioned meditate at this. This is the portion below in the middle of the chest where the diaphragm is. So this is the middle center of the chest. So this is seen to be, but actually if you cut there is nothing there. But that's the locations of these mentioned to be of the Hidayavatthu. So then the explanation is given in the next one. I have also mentioned it. Sahajata Pachya 51. In the case of conescence condition, at conditioning Dhamma, that is the Pachya Dhamma on arising, causes the conditioned Dhamma, Pachya Upanna Dhamma to arise simultaneously with it. Now whether you can use the word cause because English में कोई word है नहीं तो use that word. They are arising together. So example is given of a lighting of a candle. When you light a candle, the heat, the color and the light, all of them come simultaneously. They don't come one after the other. So that's the example which is given. And then we have already known all universal mental factors. हमने पढ़ा था वो सारे देखे all of them will arise simultaneously. Wholesome है तो सारे आएंगे, unwholesome है तो सारे आएंगे, ethically variable है तो सारे इकट्ठे आएंगे. They won't come one after the other. That we have already discussed, That's why we got into discussion on sati. We have 19 mental factors. All of them will be arise together. So if you say we have practicing sati patthana, we should make sure that all other factors are also there. then only we are practicing Satipatthana. Otherwise, we are practicing attention regulation. As most of the mindfulness exercises are being done abroad, they are all attention regulation exercise. They are not mindfulness exercises in the true sense of the term.
So, Praditya Samutpad, in one of the interpretations is that all of them arise together.
No, it's not. Some conditions arise together. Some arise one after another. Some are predominant. Some are root. Isn't it? Now we have to see. When you say avidya, paccaya, sankhara, now I think I can ask you a question. What is avidya? What will be the relationship of avidya to root? It will be a root. It's a root. Avidya means moha. So it's a root. It's related to root. So it is very strong. Roots are the ones which hold up the whole plant. Whole tree is held in the root. So विद्या का रूट रहेगा तो जैसे अजान सुमे तो कहते हैं ना, फिर कुछ भी करते रहो. You do whatever you like. If the vidya root is there, you do any thing, any practice, any tradition, anything, end result तो वही होने वाला. So that is the implication of that. Strength of the root. So this is the, if there are any questions, we can take that, or if you still have minds willing to accept next, we can study next. It's a bit tough, so it may not be easy. So I think we can stop then.
That was the question.
If there are any questions, we can discuss it. That will be better because वो भारी पड़ जाएगा. Because I have studied, I will prefer to do it quickly. But it's better, I think. Let's absorb them one by one and then slowly go. So if there are any questions or any discussion, let's try to reflect on it and see if there's any way we can make it better understood.
So there was one question from Sudhakar with reference to the Sutta which we just read. There is a mention about 6 rays emitting from Buddha's body. What is the significance regarding purity?
Those are mentioned to be happening when Buddha was reflecting on Patthana. When you go to Bodhgaya, वहाँ पे एक जगह बनाई हुई जिसको रत्न घर कहते हैं. But here, it has been placed, who knows. But it says here Buddha had sat and his whole body is suffused with 7 rays. Meaning that at that time, when he was reflecting on the Patthana, he could see each and every element of the nature separated out. So just as the light has 7 constituents, so it could be as if the whole thing was clear to him. Light को अगर प्रिज्म से डालते हैं तो 7 कलर आते हैं ना. So he just broke it into each constituent. इससे नीचे, इसके नीचे कितने element पे जाएंगे? You've gone up to the basic building block of nature. So when he reflected on that, his whole body became of the same kind, because you could see that it is exactly. So to an outsider it would appear as if the rays are emitting from his body.
Because in the Sutta, the man was emitting rays.
Yeah, that's why they must have misunderstood it. He was emitting light. He was emitting light from his chest. So people must have misunderstood in that sense. That's why, anybody emitting chest light would be seen as a holy and a pious person. So hello around head वगैरह तो कितना हम उसको महत्व देते रहते हैं. So it's not a pure superstition. Person would think that maybe he is really. But as Buddha says, just by seeing me, nothing is going to happen. So leave aside anybody. There's that sutta, famous sutta. One, I forget the name. So that is allowed. I'm allowed to forget no names. So that person was a prince, I think. He was so much enamored of Buddha that he became a monk. He would always follow him. और देखता रहेगा उनकी वो प्रोफेशन दे रहे हैं वो और उनकी देखता रहेगा वो क्या कर रहे हो भाई. People asked him, this is such a wonderful splendor, grandeur of his body, and I feel so thrilled and happy. So then Buddha tells him that you are not seeing me actually. You are just seeing the physical body. What is there in it? You are not seeing me. The only person who sees Dhamma sees the Buddha. So if you see the Buddha, then you are seeing the Dhamma. So even if you are miles away from me, and if you are practicing Dhamma, then you are seeing me. But if you are sitting me, if you cap hold of my apron cloth and travel with me all the time, you are not seeing me. So that is the.
So Silesh wanted some more clarity on. So he says attention regulation versus mindfulness. Couldn't understand.
So, Arpan, would you explain? Attention regulation versus mindfulness. Let us see. So good.
So as I have understood it, there are several other, in addition to attention, there are several other factors that come into play. Now I don't remember all of them. And so only when they all occur together, does it refer to sati as sati is meant to be by in the Abhidhamma by the Buddha, whereas हम उसको सामान्य रूप से सिर्फ attention लेके चलते हैं, but only when we studied Abhidhamma did we also realize कि हम जिस चीज को सती समझते थे, that may only be attention unless it is accompanied by 17 factors. So that's how I have experienced it and understood it. और वो पता भी चलता है जब हम उसको लेके आते हैं, when we bring it into life also.
Silesh is further saying by sati you are referring to second level of awareness.
Mindfulness.
Mindfulness is second level.
Yes.
And attention regulation is first level.
Attention is basically, in Abhidhammic sense, we had seen attention was a universal, ethically variable factor. And that can be wholesome, it can be unwholesome. Sati cannot be unwholesome. Sati means being mindful. Mindful of, that's why in Sati Patthana it says, Vire loke avidya do manasam. Vine loke avidya do manasam. बार कहते रहते हैं ना. So, Vinaya means putting aside. Loke, towards the world. Avidya, grasping. Do manasam, aversion. So having put aside aversion and craving, then you will be practicing mindfulness. If you remember there were 19 wholesome factors in the universal wholesome factor list. Sati was one of them. Others were alobho, adoso. These two factors are also there. They have to be there simultaneously. Then there are hiri, otappa. There should be moral shame, moral dread. Then various kinds of mental flexibility and kayu lahita, chitta lahuta, and so on. Various flexibility, malleability of mind, non-rigidity, flexibility, openness. All these are qualities which are simultaneously present with sati. Attention regulation, for example, would be that you are observing something. For example, you can say it in a way of concentration. Attention regulation, you can call it as a concentration exercise. You raise the concentration level to such an extent that you are able to see things more clearly. But it is not accompanied by purity and wholesomeness, and therefore that can be misused in a variety of ways.
वो जो हम बार-बार example देते हैं that even a robber is
not only that. Not only that.
Thief has to be very vigilant.
Even there have been strong criticism of the practices of mindfulness being done by corporate world. And he pointed out कि रूट में तुम्हारे तो यही है कि इसको
Profit
एम्प्लॉई जो है ज्यादा अच्छी तरह काम करेगा, बेसिक रूट में तो यही है. And then you want to think that you can practice and therefore you will become a noble person. ऐसा नहीं होना.
Right.
Lobha is the root.
Right.
And you are doing same training but with the root of lobha. If a meditator is meditating with the root of lobha and doing everything which is being told by instructions सारी follow कर रहा है, लेकिन root lobha का है कि मुझे अरे इस सिर में बहुत दर्द है ठीक हो जाए, या मेरे राग बहुत है वो कम हो जाए. You are not really practicing in that sincerely, in the true sense as Buddha wants us to practice. So it's a very subtle thing which we miss out. I remember there was this wisdom, अभी तो अमेरिका में है जिनको तो मालूम ही होगा, wisdom 1.0, wisdom 2.0 वो करते रहते हैं.
एक में लड़ाई हो गई थी.
हाँ, उसी में हुआ था ना. वो एक लड़ाई क्या हुई थी? One of the persons, she was an activist. She got up and said, I also want to speak. And she said, you are using this to exploit your workers. अपने workers को कहते हो आप हफ्ते में 80 घंटे काम करो और जहाँ टेंशन हो जाए तो ध्यान कर लेना. Is this valid? But none of the meditation teachers said anything to them. Only Eckhart Tolle, he mentioned. It's all very good, mindfulness is very good, but please see to it that industry as a whole also becomes mindful of what is happening in the world. Contain your greed. And then the commentator mentioned, वो tricycle में आया था article.
अच्छा.
I was surprised that all the Buddhist teachers were sitting there, nobody said anything, and it was a non-Buddhist person who had to point out.
पर ये तो है सारी बुद्धिस्ट जो है हमारे बड़े पैसिफिस्ट हैं. ये तो मुझे बहुत लगता है. पैसिफिस्ट मतलब यही कि चलने दो, चल रहा है. Even that's a big problem I had even with the Nanachat people. कभी बहुत ऐसा.
वो तो सब में कुछ ना कुछ तो रहेगा ही.
I mean that
actually वो let go का जो base है ना, that it can easily go there.
यार ये near enemy है. ये वो हो गया कि इंडिफरेंस आ गई कहीं. At least that's my perception.
नहीं, वो एक्चुअली हमारे लिए बड़ा मुश्किल है पता करना कि इंडिफरेंस है कि नहीं. इसकी बड़ा आर्गुमेंट हो चुकी है हमारी उसपे फेसबुक पे एक बार. It's very difficult to figure out, one may realize that because if that is not the case, then people say you should be activists.
भिक्खु बोधि वही तो कर रहे हैं.
बोधि कर रहे हैं ना, but he's being told by many people that it's not. You are inciting aversion in the minds of people by doing activism. It's a very delicate thing. You can't know the state of mind of, because Buddha never had entered into any activism. He didn't tell kings and princes कि तुमको आर्मी हटा के बंद कर देनी चाहिए.
So how would he be Bhikkhu Bodhi being accused of activism?
He's doing.
He's very active.
Very active.
He's
organizing people against environmental. अभी वो कोई fracking के खिलाफ उन्होंने काफी किया था. उसके.
I thought he was primarily doing these academic work.
No, that he has been doing. He's been doing, and he sits in the Chinese monastery, meditates there, teaches Abhidhamma, but he's also writing articles. He has now compiled a teaching of the Buddha on social and factors. His latest जो उनकी book है ना, the writings of the Buddha from Sutta, he has taken out some. If you see the books of Bhikkhu Bodhi, you will find it's a title as social and community words of Buddha. So he's extracted all those things, and he's actually putting it into practice in the sense of activism. तो वो एक्टिविज्म जो है वो aversion को लीड करेगा कि मैत्री को लीड करेगा, ये बड़ा डेलिकेट चीज है. That is a very crucial thing. There is one I saw one. जब ये इनके इलेक्शंस हो रहे थे ना, तो डेमोक्रेट्स की जब कन्वेंशन हो रही थी, he also must have thought that she will be the winning person. So at the convention जो delegates आ रहे थे, Bhikkhu Bodhi and large number of people sat outside that convention hall and practiced metta towards them and towards them, and in the hope that they would look into the environment, जो भी आ रहे हैं, जो भी कैंडिडेट हैं हमारे प्रेसिडेंट के लिए, they will not ignore the environmental issues. Because खास तौर पे वो जो ट्रम्प है उसको तो शायद डेमोक्रेट उसके एनवायरनमेंट के प्रति ज्यादा सजगता नहीं है. So they were practicing metta, and then he conducted a compassion. He conducted a meditation on compassion, and he highlighted tsunami, he highlighted starving people, he highlighted the state of Maldives कि वो जो डूब रहा है, and we should be compassionate, and we hope that all the people around would be compassionate and think about that. So, I mean, that is one thing, but the next level was about that he stopped fracking, उसकी pipeline को रोक दिया, ये सब किया उन्होंने. So वो थोड़ा
So दरअसल मुद्दा सिर्फ वोल्यूशन का है.
हाँ, basically. It is जितने भी हमारे activists हैं, majority of them are run by aversion. I've seen them. I don't mean you. I don't know.
And even within the monastic thing, the issue of indifference is also an issue of volition.
Yeah.
So ये जो
अब जैसे वो जो इशू था वुमेन की